some of you have attended our previous events, maybe our IBC seminars and all that. But I suppose majority of you have not heard of Biosafety Act. Huh? So we'll have a Q&A session at the end, but I'm trying to touch the basics so you will have a better understanding of what this Biosafety Act is about. Okay, this is the outline of my presentation today. First, I'll introduce this Biosafety in Malaysia, Biosafety Act, its regulations. And then you have to answer the question, so what? I'm telling you about the Biosafety Act. How is this relevant to your life, right? So then I will inform you about what are the requirements under the Biosafety Act and how it's going to affect you. And then finally, I'll sum it all up. Okay? So biosafety. What do we mean by biosafety? Basically, this is principles and practices that we do, basically to reduce any risk that might result from modern biotechnology. Modern biotechnology is this technology that results in GMOs. You've heard of GMOs, genetically modified organisms, living modified organisms. I'm sure some of you all are working on activities like this. So basically, we can't deny that there are risks associated with GMOs and LMOs. So biosafety is what we have to reduce and eliminate the potential risk. There's zero risk, doesn't exist. There's definitely some form of risk associated with modern biotech and its products. So what we do is we use biosafety to reduce and eliminate the risk so that it is safe for human, plant and animal health and also for the environment. So biosafety is actually an important thing that you need for sustainable development. What are these risks? What are these concerns that we are talking about? Okay? Let's talk about impact to the environment. Usually when you produce a GMO, okay, a genetically modified organism, it's something, a plant that's superior. You don't want to spend your time, your money and your resources to result in an inferior plant. Usually there's some trait that you introduce to the plant. Maybe it's resistant to herbicide, resistant to some form of insect, maybe it's able to grow in an area that last time it was not able to grow, like different kind of soil. It's something superior. So usually these plants or animals or organisms that result from genetic modification has a superior trait. That's good because that's what you want in that plant or the organism. However, there's also some impact to the environment. It might have potential to infect or colonize animals or plants because of the superior quality that we have introduced into the organism. Or it could infect invertebrates or vertebrate or domestic animals with economic importance. These might be unintended effects. You have introduced a certain trait, however, through the introduction of that trait, some other things might occur. Or it has high survival and disseminate into the environment. That's good. Your organism or your plant can survive very well in the environment. However, it can, overtake other plants and conquer. It might become an invasive species for all you know. So these are the unintended effects and these are the risks that have impact to the environment. What about impact to human health? We have like GM corn, GM soya of which we consume. So we have introduced a certain gene into the corn or soya. You have to look at it from the allergenicity point. By introducing this gene, has it become an allergen? This new gene, is it similar to any allergens that are existing? You have to check on things like that. What about the toxicity? What about the pathogenicity? The possible alteration on the route of infection. Things can happen that it's not usually happening before. Your conventional plant, maybe this is the route of infection. But through the introduction of this new gene, things can change. So these are causes of concern. And these are the things that you have to check. For example, impact to the health, possible survival outside the host. For example, if you're dealing with microbes, usually this host doesn't survive in our climate and environment. But you might have introduced a gene that enables it to survive, to survive our climate. So these are the things you have to consider when you're dealing with GMOs. So these are some of our concerns. Don't look so scared. There are ways to manage this risk, okay? Another thing is antibiotic resistance. So the list can actually go on. Tomorrow you will have some exercises of which you can practice, how to do a risk assessment. But basically this is just like a laundry list of things that we do to check when you're dealing with GMO, when you are handling risk assessment of GMOs. Okay, a bit of history now. since 1996, under the Ministry of Science and Science, Technology and Environment, MOSTE at that time, there was already a GMAC existing under MOSTE. So what this GMAC does is actually an informal group. Administratively, they will assess any GMOs that are coming into our country. Because you see, big companies deal with a lot of other countries that already have a law for biosafety. So, but at that time we didn't have a law, so this was very administrative and was very voluntary. And these people come, they do assessment, they are not even paid. So, that was how things were in 1996. In 1998, we have our National Policy on Biological Diversity. If you look at this document, under Strategy 11, it calls for biosafety to conserve our environment. If you're dealing with GMOs, it's telling us that we have to make sure that something is in place, a mechanism is in place to protect our environment so that GMOs do not harm our biodiversity. So that's one. And in 2000, Malaysia signed the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. In 2003, the protocol was enforced. So this is an international agreement. In 2006-2007, the Biosafety Bill was in the Parliament. Sorry, I missed 2005. 2005, we have a biotechnology policy. Some of you all might have heard about this. So this is a policy under MOSTE. So this is where you get all your grants, the drive to move our biotechnology forward, knowledge driven to gain wealth accumulation through biotechnology. These kind of things, all is coming under the biotechnology policy. That was in 2005. So moving on, 2007, the Biosafety Act was passed in Parliament, and then we have our transition period. Biosafety Core Team was formed 2008. However, now we are a department. In 2010, we will transform to become a department. And then in 2010, our biosafety regulations was enforced. So we have the Biosafety Act, and then the biosafety regulations is fully enforced right now. And 2010, we have the Nagoya Kuala Lumpur Supplementary Protocol. So this is liability and redress. This is a story on its own. I don't think we have time for this. But basically, this is how biosafety has evolved in Malaysia. So from 1996, we already have something to do with biosafety. So talking about the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, this is an international agreement. It has more than 190 countries who have signed this protocol. So what about this protocol? This protocol actually regulates movement of GMOs from one country to another. What does it mean? When we sign the agreement, we are telling other countries, when we export our GMOs, when we transfer our GMOs to another country, we have to make sure that the country is agreeable to receive the GMO. Same thing, people cannot simply bring GMO into our country without getting our permission. If not, everybody and anybody and their grandfather will bring GMOs into our country, and the impact, who has to bear the impact? Malaysia, us, right? So by signing this protocol, we agree that we will not send our GMOs to another country unless they agree to receive it. And we also will not bring in GMOs unless we are ready to receive it. So we do a risk assessment to see whether this GMO is okay to be brought into our country. So the gist, in a nutshell, that's what this Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety is about. What about locally? What do we have to regulate GMOs? Can you simply plant a GMO in your backyard? Those kind of things are regulated under the Biosafety Act. So domestically, we have the Biosafety Act. Between country, movement from one country to another, that is regulated by the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. Okay, so what does biosafety do? On one hand, we want to drive biotechnology, we want to create wealth, we want to do all sorts of things. There's a lot of exciting research that's going on in biotech. So that comes under the biotech policy. However, at the same time, we also have our biodiversity policy. We want to make sure our biodiversity is intact, we don't harm our environment. Because we are actually one of the mega biodiverse country in Malaysia, one of the 12 mega biodiverse country in Malaysia, we want to preserve what we have. So what do? We want to have a balancing act. We want to drive biotechnology, but not at the cost of harming our biodiversity and our environment. So that's what the Biosafety Act does. How do we do it? Whatever activity, biotechnology activity that we're doing, we'll look at it. We will do an assessment, risk assessment, of which we're going to be doing tomorrow. and check whether it's okay or not to do this activity. Okay? So that's what the Biosafety Act does. So this is actually a complementing instrument, a balancing act between the policy of biotechnology as well as the biological diversity. It's also to fulfill Malaysia's obligation. Remember the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety? Under this Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, we agree to come up with a local mechanism to control GMOs. So what is our measure? You can have a policy, you can use our existing laws, we can do many things. But what has Malaysia done? We have come up with a biosafety law to specifically regulate GMOs. This actually boosts confidence of investors in modern biotechnology. Because like us, our department, we deal a lot with foreign countries. And you know, like foreign investors and all that, they're coming in here and they're not sure, can we set up a facility? Can we bring in a GMO? We are not sure. So this gives that assurance. We have a Biosafety Act, processes are already in place. If you have this, if you go through your risk assessment, everything is fine, you can bring it in because we have a law. So it's very clear cut what needs to be done, what form you need to fill, who you can contact to get guidance and all that. So it's gives assurance for investors that we have a law in place for GMOs and modern biotech activities. It gives a clear direction on regulatory framework on modern biotech, and it was never intended to disrupt R&D. This is not a law to say that you cannot do R&D. This is a law to ensure that R&D is done in a safe manner. Okay, so this is more or less a flow chart to show you where everybody fits in, okay? You have your National Biosafety Board here, of which I will talk more in a bit. And then we have our Department of Biosafety here. So our department is actually a small department based in Putrajaya. And under our department, we have 4 different sections. So under the board, you have your GMAC, and you also have subcommittees under GMAC. So basically, that's how everything fits in here. So what is the objective of this law? Basically, is to set up the National Biosafety Board. So what does this board do? This board regulates all GMOs and activities related to GMOs with the objectives of protecting human, plant and animal health, the environment and biological diversity. So this thing you see in red is very important because whenever you're doing your risk assessment, this is the objective. At the end of the day, when you're doing your risk assessment, any activity that you're doing, you just ask yourself, do I protect the human, animal and plant health? Nothing must be jeopardized here. So that's the end game, that's your end point. And for your information, we use the term GMOs and LMOs interchangeably. Okay, so the National Biosafety Board comprises of 6 different ministries. So these are main stakeholders in terms of modern biotechnology. So the chair is actually our KSU, our Secretary General of NRE. And then we have other departments. You have MOSTI here, you have MITI, you have Domestic Trade and Cooperative Consumerism, you have your Plantation and Industries Commodities, you have your Ministry of Health and your MOE. So these are the ministries, policy makers. Might not have necessarily a scientific background. So what do we do? To top off, we have 4 experts in biosafety, also has board members. So these are people with science background, or maybe they might be from the universities, but basically they are able to understand the science and tech part of your activities. So this is the Biosafety Board. There's a lot of functions of the board, but what is the most visible function of the board would be this. It decides on all applications, approvals and notifications, meaning that all applications will go to them, so the board will decide whether you can or cannot do a certain activity that you are applying for. So this is the most visible role of the board. Apart from that, they also have other duties like this. They are in charge of assessing risk, they promote R&D and stuff like that. But what you need to know for now is they decide on the applications. Okay, what is this GMAC? GMAC is the technical committee under the National Biosafety Board. They were formed in 2010. So what basically GMAC does is they provide advice to the board. These are all technical people. You see, they comprise of plant breeders. They have expertise in genetic engineering, virology, all these expertise. This is composite technical committee. Basically, they will look at your activity and they will make recommendations to the board. They will do, okay, these guys, the activity, they have done their risk assessment well, they can manage their risk, and we recommend that they proceed with their activity. So basically, recommendations come from GMAC. So what about the scope of the Act? Okay, the scope of the Act is limited to modern biotechnology. So all institutes and all persons who are involved in modern biotechnology is regulated by this board. So it doesn't matter whether you're a private institute, semi-government, whatever, as long as you're dealing with modern biotech, you're regulated under this law. All stages of R&D, whether you're doing an optimization with your particle gun, whether you already have a good transgenic line and you want to plant in your transgenic glass house, whether you're going to do a field trial, whether you're bringing in a plant to do commercial planting, all stages is covered under this law. All types of organisms, whether you're dealing with plants, microbes, frogs, mosquitoes, whatever, as long as it's a genetically modified organism, is regulated under this law. And what kind of activities are regulated? We regulate contained use, we regulate import for contained use, we regulate export, import for release, as well as release. So these are the kind of activities that are regulated under the biosafety law. As I mentioned earlier, it's limited to modern biotechnology. If you're going to do bread in your kitchen and you're going to use yeast, that is not regulated under the biosafety law because that is conventional biotech, right? So this is the difference. This is a definition of modern biotech that's available under the law. Basically, it is the insertion of a DNA into an organism. What do we mean by animals? Any living organism that possesses a novel combination of genetic material. So these are definitions under the law. I have to go through this so you'll understand what we regulate. Okay? As long as it's a novel combination and is obtained through modern biotech. So these are the two key things that you have to remember on what we mean by GMOs or animals. What do we mean by products? A product is something that's derived from a GMO. It has to contain a detectable recombinant DNA. If it doesn't contain a detectable DNA, but it is no longer equivalent to its conventional counterpart, that is also considered a product of a GMO. What do we mean by contained use? Contained use is any operation, including R&D, production or manufacturing operation involving animals or even storage of animals. That is also considered a contained use. So basically for us here in an academic institute, we are talking about your laboratories. Some institutes, they have transgenic glass houses. You know, you might even have a site for like your glass house, you might store your GMOs. So basically all this is considered a contained use. Release. What do we mean by release? All sorts of field experiments, supply or offer to supply for sale. I think the rest of it is not really relevant to you, but what I want you to focus here is basically the field trial. If it's a field trial, it's considered a release. How do you differentiate a contained use and a release? Basically, if there's any form of contact to the environment, that is already considered a release. If you're working in a lab, there's no contact to the environment, so that would be considered a contained use. So this is how we differentiate these two. So there are actually two regulatory processes under the Biosafety Act. Firstly is notification, and secondly is the approval. Notification is more of a simplified process because we address more of R&D work. So it's contained use or import for contained use. Import for contained use, what do we mean? Sometimes you have collaboration with other research universities overseas. So your starting material is actually from overseas. You know, you might bring your starting material from overseas with your collaborator, and then you do some work in your lab. So that's what I mean import for contained use. So that is also regulated under this Biosafety Act. And all that will come under notification. So now you've identified a promising line, and then you want to do a field trial, meaning that you want to plant it outside to check whether the trait actually is expressed. Of course, you can do your molecular, your southern and all that, confirm already, right? But then you also want to plant it outside. So So that will be considered a field trial. So when we come for field trial, the process is entirely different, and that will come under the approval. So the cut-off is here. Okay, as long as it's continuous, it's a simple notification. What is the penalty? This is the penalty under the law. If you do not submit a notification, but are doing modern biotech activities, this is the penalty, a fine of 250,000 or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years. Okay, so this is actually serious business. And if you are doing modern biotech, we strongly urge you to quickly submit your notification. At the moment, this is just some stats for you. There's a lot of modern biotech activities going on in Malaysia. But the bulk of the notification that we process is actually mostly microbes. Then we also have plants. Other than that, we also have animals and arthropod research that's going on in Malaysia. So basically, this is stats for you of what is being processed in the Department of Biosafety. What about planting outside? Most of the GMOs that are under research are mostly in contained use activities. Still, research in contained use, not really for field trials yet. We do have one field trial of papaya, and this is being conducted by Maradi. If you're interested to read about this, you can go to this website here. You can read about the field trial of papaya, and also, a non-food field trial that happened was on mosquitoes. Have you heard about the GM mosquitoes by IMR? Yes? No? We also have approved a GM mosquito, so that if you want to find out more about it, there's more information on our website. But there has been no request so far for food cultivation in Malaysia. It's not that it's not allowed, but we have had no applications. Okay? So then currently there are no food cultivations in Malaysia for GMOs. Okay, so based on all this information, some of you are already yawning because the Biosafety Act is not really the most interesting subject to talk about. What do you need to know? I've summed up 6 items that you need to know. Firstly, you need to know that if you are involved in modern biotech activities, you need to get approval from the National Biosafety Board. Okay? So when you submit a notification, this is the process. Okay? This is notifier, which is you, the principal investigator, will submit your form through the IBC to our office. If everything is complete, we will issue an acknowledgement. Once we issue an acknowledgement, you can start your activity. Okay? This is the difference between a notification and an approval. Within 7 days, we will issue an acknowledgement and you can start your activity. However, the process will continue. See? We will give your notification to GMAC, and then if there are any policy concerns, we will also give the relevant government agencies. So that is here. But usually for notification, it's not necessary. Usually you'll just go through GMAC. GMAC will make their recommendation, and then the board will decide on your activities. So this entire process will take 90 days. But remember, within 7 days, we'll issue the letter of acknowledgement and you can proceed. So why does it seem like so lax? It's actually not lax because we have confidence in your IBC. Before your notification reaches us, your IBC has already done a thorough assessment on it. And your IBC also recommends that this activity is safe, the PI is good, the PI has training, the PI has expertise, the people who are handling the GMO are fine, the facility who is handling it is okay. We have already done the inspection, everything is done. So you see the groundwork is already done by your IBC, so we are also confident. So in 7 days, we will usually issue the letter of acknowledgement for you to start your activity, unless there are any problems. But usually there's no problem, we'll issue in 7 days. Okay, how much is the fees? Anybody knows? We have no fees. So you're free to submit your application free of charge. Okay, this is the process of approval. I suppose most of you all are involved in contained use activities, so this might not be relevant for you unless you're already at the stage to do your field trial. Other than that, this process might not be relevant for you. I'll just go through very quickly for you. The application of approval will take 180 days. But what I want to highlight here, the process is more or less the same as a notification, except for the time period. You see, it's 180 days. What is interesting here? Public. You see? For an application of approval, we have involvement of the public. We have to ask the public opinion. Are you okay with this activity happening? So we have this process of public consultation. Once all this is done, then the board will give a decision, yes or no, for the application to go through. So when we talk about public participation, what actually happens? The application comes to us, and then we will advertise in 4 national newspapers, okay? Malay, English, Mandarin, and Tamil. 2 announcements in each newspaper, meaning that today we have the announcement in a newspaper, another 2 weeks we have to announce again in the same newspaper, okay? And on the first day the announcement becomes publicized, we also upload the relevant information on our Biosafety website. And the period of input that we receive is 30 days. Okay, public is free to give their input for 30 days. So you as members of the public are also free to give your input. Okay, so that's why I'm going through this. So hopefully next time we can get some input also from you members of UTAR. Oh, that's great. So that's how that's how the advertisement looks like. Huh? Okay, so this is our website, www.biosafety.nre.gov.my. Here, this is where the public consultation is. Okay, I will strong. Is there anything going on now? Nothing yet, right? No public consultation. Okay, at the moment there's no public consultation going on, but look out because we are currently assessing a few applications. So look out for this. This is where you should go, and also we also have a forum going on. So when we ask for public input, you can actually participate in all this. See, this was the previous one, but this one is already closed. So you see, if you see it's open, that means we are getting inputs from the public. But before you give your input saying that, no, I don't like GMOs, please don't plant GMOs, with no reason whatsoever, we strongly advise you to read our fact sheet. Okay? The advertisement you see just now, thanks for bringing it up. You see, this is that announcement here. What can you get from this announcement? Nothing much actually. We'll just tell you that this event, for example, this GMO XYZ is coming into the country. We are going to be placing in the market, and what you think about it, you can give your input. That's about it. We can't give you a lot of information. What is this event? What was the gene that was put in? What is the gene of interest? What are the risks that might be resulting from this modification? All this we cannot put here. Why can't we put it here? Why not? You should put everything here, right? We can't. Because the cost of this advertisement is borne by the researchers. You guys, this is your funds, your research money going inside for this advertisement. So we have a size limitation for this. So basically this announcement is just to let you know that public consultation is going on. Everything else is in the fact sheet. Okay? So you read the fact sheet, they'll give you information. Who are the guys who are bringing in this soya or corn? What is the risk? Everything is available in the fact sheet. So we strongly urge you to read the fact sheet before you jump into any conclusions. So after you read the fact sheet, and then you have any queries, you can ask us, and then you can get your input from here. So basically, we have actually done a survey, and we found that people who are very knowledgeable are actually people from the academia about biosafety, about GMOs and all that. So that's why usually I will spend some time here because I want to encourage you in our next public input. Please participate. Give your input on what you think about GMOs, the GMO that's coming in and the risk assessment that's being done. Give your input, okay? We will really appreciate that. You can send your input to biosafety@nre.gov.my, okay? So going back to the application of approval, okay? The application, the decision will be done in 180 days. The decisions may vary, either approve in terms and conditions, or rejected. So the difference between an application of approval and a notification is, an approval, you cannot start your activity. You know the announcement is being done, you're getting public input, you're getting policy input from relevant government agencies and all that. They cannot bring in the product, or you cannot start your activity. You cannot start your field trial until you get your certificate of approval. Only after it's approved, only then you can start your activities. This is different from your notification. Notification, your application comes in, 7 days, we give you a letter of acknowledgement, you can start your activity. Okay? Stuck. for application approval, you do have fees. For field trials, you have, depends on the size of your field trial. Anything else is 5,000 ringgit per application, okay? And how is a decision made for an application of approval? Remember GMAC, they will give their recommendation. So this is very science-based. Basically, you will have an exercise tomorrow, you'll be doing a risk assessment. So basically, what exercise you are doing tomorrow is basically what GMAC does. Based on that, they'll give a recommendation to the board. They will look at publications, they will look at papers and stuff like that. So it's very science-based. Other than that, they also take into consideration policy input. For example, if I'm going to bring in a GM corn for food, I need to check with the Department of Chemistry. Can you detect this GMO? If you can't detect, how am I going to make sure that it's already approved or it's not? So that is quite important for us at the points of entry. So this is an example of a policy input. And also public consideration, meaning that input that I told you just now, public will give input, NGOs will give input, everybody will have their own reasons. They'll say, oh, this gene is dangerous, it's herbicide resistant, but then we don't want it. Like a lot of reasons. Very interesting to work with, but it has to be a holistic decision, meaning that you have to take into consideration the science and tech part of it, your technical assessment. You have to take into consideration what the public thinks, and also you have to take into consideration policy input. So based on all three, that's how the board will make their decision. So this is a summary of the regulatory processes under the Biosafety Act. Okay? Notification is for contained use. Application of approval is for release. This includes field trial. That will be most relevant for you. Time period for decisions. Notification is 90 days. Approval is 180 days. For notification, you no need to consult the public, whereas for application of approval, yes, public consultation is mandatory. No fees for notification, but there is fees for application of approval. Notification, once you get your letter of acknowledgement from the Department of Biosafety, your activity can jalan already, you don't need to wait anymore, okay? Certificate of approval is needed before you do any release activities. Both also, if you're not happy with the decision, you can appeal. So basically, this is the summary of that. Okay, second thing you need to know. For your modern biotech activities, you need to do a risk assessment of your activity. You need to develop a risk management strategy and even an emergency response plan before you do your activity. You must be well versed with whatever activity that you are doing. So what is a risk assessment process under the biosafety law? It's actually a 3-tier process, meaning that you guys, the applicant, you need to know what is the activity that you are doing. Who best to know your activity? Yourselves, right? So based on what you're doing, then you have to identify what is the risk that's associated with your activity. So this is round 1, tier 1. You yourself do your risk assessment. And then you submit to your IBC. So IBC will take a look at it. Everything is okay, then you will submit it to us, the Department of Biosafety. Department of Biosafety will submit it to GMAC. So this is round 2. GMAC will look at your risk assessment. Theirs is an independent risk assessment. Yours has gone through your IBC. IBC thinks it's okay, it's clear, coming to GMAC. But GMAC comprises of a different set of individuals. So they might look at your activity and they might identify things that maybe your IBC or yourself did not think about. So they might make some other recommendations for risk management. So that is round 2. Based on the recommendation, the application will go to the board. That is round 3. Remember, we have 4 experts in the board, science-based people, right? So they will also take a look at your activity. If there's anything else to be added, usually they will add it at round 3 at the board level. So based on what has been happening so far, usually IBC will look at your assessment already, everything done already. When it comes to GMAC, sometimes we will do recommendations and all that. So basically at GMAC level, usually it's already completed. Very seldom you have anything to do at the board level because it is already sufficient. So this is how a risk assessment matrix looks like. This one you can download from our website, and this is what you're going to be doing tomorrow, okay? So assessment is based on what you provide, okay? Okay, you will do the first round of assessment, you as the applicant. You will propose your risk assessment, risk management, and emergency response plan. Of course, the 7 days you will issue acknowledgement, right? We don't tutup mata issue acknowledgement. So at our side, we also have evaluation and research section. So we will do an initial assessment. Just say the objective of your activity. Yeah? Just say I want to do a modern biotech activity. I want to create this microbe, and the objective of my research is to destroy the world. So when it comes to Department of Biosafety, we see, oh, your objective to destroy the world, maybe we might not issue a letter of acknowledgement. I know we don't encourage you to destroy the world, right? So basically, we will do an initial assessment at the Department of Biosafety. If it's not something, if you're not dealing with ESL3, if you're not dealing with some organism that doesn't exist in Malaysia, like Yersinia or this kind of very highly contagious pathogens, usually we have been dealing just with ESL3 risk group 2 organisms. So far it's been fine. Okay, so minimum risk management measures required is determined by the board. Meaning that just say you have proposed your risk management strategy 1 and 2. And then IBC says, no lah, I think you must do risk management 1, 2, 3. So you also agree, okay lah, I will do 1, 2, 3. Goes to GMAC. GMAC does another assessment. They say, no, your risk management strategy, you have to do risk management strategy 1, 2, 3, and 4. So at the end of the day, what do? It goes through the board, and then the board also agrees, yeah, we agree that risk management strategy must be 1, 2, 3, and 4. What do? Is it 1, 2, 3 only as recommended by your IBC? No. At the end of the day, you have to do risk management strategies 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? The minimum is required by the board. However, if you feel that no, you want to be like extra vigilant and all that, you want to do like 6 management strategies, go ahead. But the minimum requirement is what is required by the board. Okay? You have to incorporate whatever that's been suggested into your activity. You have to take the necessary measures if there's any comments on your emergency response plan. So this is important for you to take note of. Okay, so more on this tomorrow. I'm just talking about the principles of risk assessment and management, what you need to do. But the risk assessment per se, you guys will have a whole day of it tomorrow. What else do you need to know? What is the information you need to submit and how do you do it? Okay, this is what I need you to know. What is the information that's needed from you? Basically, for field trial, we will ask you information like where's the location, what is the LMO, what are the traits, what's the size of your field trial, and blah blah blah. Those kind of things we'll ask for field trial. But I don't think anybody's doing field trial here, so let's focus on contained use. Okay? Contained use, usually, basically, you want to know who's the PI, details about your activities, describe your activity, what is the objective of your activity, what is the GMO that you're working on, what is the source of the gene, where is the premises, how do you dispose of your GMO, how do you clean the equipment. So these are the kind of things that you will need to answer. These are the kind of information that you have to give us when you are doing a contained use research. Last time, this is the kind of information that we required. So after many rounds of assessment, because we try to differentiate what is the information that's nice to know and what is the information that you need to know to do a proper assessment of your activity. So we have comprised the information that we need, we winsipkan. So now we have all these forms in place for you to take a look at. But I suppose, like I mentioned just now, none of you are doing field trial, so this is more for certificate of approval. Just for your information, we have 4 forms that's associated with certificate of approval. Form A and Form B deals with field trials. Okay, if you're doing a plant field trial, you have to fill out Form A. If anything other than plant, it will be Form B. If any other form of release but associated with plant, that will be Form C. Everything else for release is Form D. Okay, so this is the types of forms that we have. Okay, this is the form that's most important for you, Form E. Okay, Form E caters for contained use, meaning that you're doing your modern biotech activities in your laboratories. That would be Form E. I'm doing a collaboration with National University of Singapore. I want to bring the starting material from NUS, but I'm going to work in my lab. Also Form E. Okay, it's the same form. It's just that you probably have to give some information about details about the importer, when you plan to import your material and stuff like that. So those questions you might need to ask. But if it's a locally developed GMO, then it's still the same form, okay? Form E. If you're going to export your LMO, just say you have a papaya plant, you want to export to maybe Vietnam or Singapore or something like that, then you have to fill up your Form F. Okay, this might be the relevant forms for you to take note of. Okay, what is the process? This is the process. You have to submit one original Form E and 6 copies. Okay, counter. If the requirements are not complete, we will have to turn down. Okay, Farhan is here. He can explain more. But if the requirements are not complete administratively, we are not going to receive your forms. Make sure everything is complete, and then we can start processing. Any additional information? What kind of additional information? Maybe some publication to support your risk assessment, or some other publication to say that this thing will not survive in our climate, or those kind of things. So these are the kind of things that you can provide to us to support your assessment. And also one CD with the document, and no money bags because it's free of charge for you, Form E. So you submit to us, and this should also include your IBC assessment report. Okay? So all this will be given to us, and then that will be your completion of your Form E. Okay, so submission of information is subject to Section 67 of the Act. It is an offence to submit misleading information. Okay, so we have a provision under the Act. Basically, we encourage you to be transparent about whatever information that you're giving us, and we encourage you to give supporting documents right up. Don't wait for us to ask. If you feel that it can support whatever statements that you make, just submit it together with your form. We may ask you for additional information. The process is like this. When you give us an application form, we don't sit on it silent, then 90 days suddenly something will come out. It doesn't happen that way. This assessment is an interactive assessment. If need be, we will ask you for additional information. You provide us with information. If it's a very complicated study, sometimes we even require the PI to come and explain to us in person. So we have a session of interactive session. We ask you questions, you also ask us questions. We discuss the matters. So basically, it's an interactive process. We also have this thing called CBI, Confidential Business Information. If there's any information that is required for your risk assessment, anything that maybe, mostly for academicians, something they have not published yet, so they are a bit more secretive about this, but it might be required to support your risk assessment. Please give it to us, but you can declare it as CBI. So this is a relevant example I can give to you. Of course, companies, they have other things, like the process, they have what temperature they are doing and all that. So that is maybe patented and stuff like that. So CBI would be CBI that's relevant for them is something like that. But for most academicians, it's mostly unpublished work that you're more protective about. You don't want to release the information, but it might be required for your assessment. So you can declare it as CBI and pass it on to us. So this is the criteria for CBI, information that's not known generally among or readily accessible to people among your circle. Information that has commercial value because it is secret, and you yourself have taken reasonable steps not to release this information. You cannot declare everything as CBI, CBI this, CBI that, even the first page also CBI also cannot right? It has to have some sort of value to make it a CBI. I'm not kidding, we have dossiers from private companies. The first page, tajuk also is CBI. So, there is certain criteria for CBI. What else do you need to know? Do you know you have an IBC? How many people know you have an IBC in UTAR? Only one person, excellent. Okay, you do have an IBC in UTAR, and the role of the IBC is very important when you're submitting your application forms. Okay, this is a formal entity that's set up by your university. It's recognized by your university. It's not some chalang committee with no power. Okay, it does have power to bite you. Okay. So these are the IBC responsibilities. I think Farhan will go through this in more detail later on. So one of the roles of the IBC is also to determine your BSLs, biosafety levels of your various facilities of which you're conducting your activities. What else do you need to know? There are resources available about biosafety that you can refer to. We have a whole bunch of biosafety publications, how to do risk assessment, okay? We have, this is the most applicable to you probably, contained use activity. This one is guidelines for your IBCs. Apart from that, we also have other guidelines available. This one is something interesting on, it's actually a practical guide of the Biosafety Act. So we have this one is more of Q&A for the layman on biosafety. So we have all these publications available on our biosafety website. You can go to our biosafety website and download everything for free. There you go. This is where it is. You can go to our guidelines here and you can get it for free. Okay? There are some techniques and activities that are exempted from the biosafety law. So even though just now I said that all modern biotech is regulated under the law, we do have some exemptions. Okay? So the minister may exempt activities. So under this provision, we have a whole bunch of things that are exempted. Some techniques and also activities per se that are exempted under this law. How is it that we can give exemptions? Because these activities have been assessed over time and pose a very low risk. Okay? So we got together and a whole bunch of researchers got together and all these are like very common activities, very low risk. So we don't really need to regulate them. So it's only applicable for contained use. And it's mostly organisms that are very well understood. We've been working on it for years and all that. So a lot of information is found and it doesn't behave very differently. So all these activities were compiled and we have exemption list. Okay? You can check the conditions for the exemption. However, there's no open release activities exempted. This is just for contained use, meaning that you work in your laboratory. Just say Arabidopsis is exempted. Suddenly you want to release Arabidopsis outside. Cannot, because it's exempted for contained use activity. It's exempted for the organism as well as for the purpose of it being used, which is for your contained use activity. Okay? All these exempted activities can be found in the first schedule. Again, it can be downloaded at our website. This is our website again. You see exemption on the left side, you can go there. There you go. You can download exemption under the biosafety regulation. So take a look at it, read through it. Some of your activities might already be exempted. Okay? If your activity is exempted, what happens? First, you have to check the exemption under the first schedule. Is your activity exempted? If it is exempted, then you just notify your IBC. Because whatever it is, a GMO is a GMO. There are risks. Okay, you do have to handle it carefully. Maybe you are doing already the BSL1. You still have to do your basic practices of your BSL1. So a GMO is a GMO. It still has to be handled carefully. So the IBC will be the one monitoring it and they will report to us through the annual report. So that's what happens if your activity is exempted. But if your activity is not exempted, then you have to proceed by filling up your Form E, going through the IBC and then going through the usual process. So that's what happens if your activity is exempted. That means IBC themselves will monitor it. You don't have to fill up your Form E. Okay? So in a nutshell, what do you need to know about the Biosafety Act? Okay? An approval must be obtained from the National Biosafety Board if you are dealing with any activity of modern biotech, unless it is exempted. If it is exempted, then IBC will memantau. Okay? If not, then you have to get an approval from the National Biosafety Board. Number 2, your IBC is responsible to monitor and ensure compliance at your institutional level. That means your IBC is responsible to ensure that biosafety policies are in place. You guys, if you're doing modern biotech activities, you will submit your application forms, they will process the application forms, they will visit your premises, they will do inspection. So all that comes under the IBC. So IBC plays actually a very fundamental role in implementing the Biosafety Act in your institute. And then guidance and more information is found at our Biosafety website. I encourage you when you have time to go to our website. There's a lot of information there. We also have information on all the previous approvals, what is already approved to use in Malaysia. The field trial of GM mosquito might be interesting. Just read up whatever that you're interested in. But a lot of information is already available on our website. Okay? Okay, it's not working again. It's time for me to end again. Find the PC there. My time is up, it doesn't work. Okay, never mind. I think you all have handouts, right? So anyway, that's the last of my slide. The last of my slide actually has our Facebook page. You can go to our Facebook page, there's also information found there, and also you can follow us on Twitter. If you follow us on Twitter, if there's any public consultation, we will alert you, either through our Facebook or Twitter. So the next round, maybe you guys can participate and give us input for public participation for any applications that are coming through. Okay, so with that, I end my presentation.